voting in the second phase of the Bihar elections, coming on the back of a 65% polling in the first phase put together. This is the highest ever voter turnout in the history of the state. Kishanganj recording 76.26% and 122 seats going to polls in the second phase, and the polling coming to a close. We're all eagerly awaiting the data from the exit polls, but for now let's try to understand what this means. We are looking at unprecedented voting in the Bihar elections. Nobody expected these kind of numbers. As of 5 p.m. Alone is 67.14%. We have Mr. K.V. Prasad, senior journalist, joining us on the broadcast here with us in the studio. Thank you, Mr. K.V. Prasad, for taking time out to be with us over here. We have Smita Mishra, author and senior journalist, also with us here in the studio. Smita ji, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. I'm going to begin by asking a straightforward question to you, Smita ji. Look at that turnout numbers. Unprecedented. Never even heard of. I mean, put together, you're looking at both in excess of 65% on average.
Yes, and that's why I would say, we have to wait to see who wins, whether Nitish Kumar comes back as Chief Minister of Bihar, or it is the challenger Tejasvi Yadav and his allies who will come into government. But even before we come to the 14th of November, which will be a big day, I think the voters of Bihar have already won. Democracy has already won in Bihar, and the voters of Bihar, the youth, the elderly, and most particularly our women, need to be complimented with a very, very open heart, because they have proved, no matter what the situation, no matter what the constraints, if people want to exercise their franchise, there is no power on earth which can stop them. We have always been feeling this, if I may say, the jibe, the tana, because you see, all over the country, including the farther states of the northeast, in Kashmir and everywhere, voting has gone up in the last few elections. All over the country, you will find that voting above 70%, 65% was almost the norm in the past few elections.
Okay.
But that had not been happening in Bihar, and it was kind of a sort of a disappointment why people were not coming out in so many, in as many numbers as other states of the country. And migration, palayan, because a big segment of Bihar's population, particularly the male population, has to go out of the state for livelihood, and it was not very easy for them to come back just for one day, to leave the work they were doing in whichever part of the country, just to come and vote in their area. And so we had often seen poor numbers in Bihar voting. Therefore, it is great news. I'm really thrilled. And you cannot conclude this number. First of all, I must say that this is certain to cross 70. Because in many areas, in many areas of Magadh and Shahabad and Seemanchal particularly, in several constituencies, it has already crossed 70%. So the overall data for the second phase will definitely be 70, or it could be even above 70, which is great news. Let us compliment the voters of Bihar. They have spoken, and they have made us feel that they have a power, and that power needs to be exercised.
And that's the first message that really needs to go out, irrespective of where the final number comes out. Look at these numbers. They're setting an example for the rest of the country that despite everything, despite migration, here they are coming out in full force and voting in these numbers. In fact, let's take this across to my colleague Sabir Sachi, who has been getting us all the latest reports from the ground in Bihar, now joining us on the broadcast. Sabir Sachi, thank you for being with us. Quickly take us through. As of 5 p.m. is 67%, and here we have Smita Mishra in the studio telling us that, once the final figure till 6 p.m. comes out, that number could very easily cross 70% of polling in the second phase.
Well, definitely. See, once the final numbers are out, it's likely to cross the 70% mark, and it's a bumper voting that has taken place in the entire state of Bihar. See, I have seen the voting in the first phase as well as in the second phase, and it was expected that in the second phase the voting percentage will be higher, because in the first phase 121 seats were under polling. This time around 122 seats were under polling. Now, what was really good to see is the large number of women voters, whether it was the first phase or the second phase. phase, they had come out and they have voted in large numbers, and different voices have come out from field. In fact, this time around, it is very difficult to say which party has an advantage as of now, because there has been continuous mixed reactions which has come in. See, both the NDA and the India bloc are hoping that this bumper voting would go their way, because I have spoken to the people who are close to the RJD camp. In fact, they have to say that when Nitish Kumar came into power, till this particular poll, the voting percentage under Nitish Kumar had never crossed the 60% mark. In fact, they had said that when Lalu Prasad Yadav or the RJD was in power, the voting percentage in Bihar have crossed the 60% mark, which means that the people of Bihar wants a change, and that is the reason why they have come out in large numbers to cast their vote. Whereas on the other hand, the NDA feels that the women voters are happy with the fact that the NDA government under Nitish Kumar have done a lot for the women. In fact, we can't deny the fact that Nitish Kumar is one of the experts as far as social engineering is concerned. See, when he came to power, whether it is giving bicycles to the women in the state of Bihar, or whether giving Jivika Didi scheme. Now, Nitish Kumar time and again has been continuously supporting the women voters in the state. So the NDA is hoping that the women voters would vote in favor of the NDA. So clearly the MY factor will come into play, as the migration is a big problem in different constituencies, not only the Seemanchal, but all across the Bihar. The youth have been complaining about the migration, have been complaining about lack of job opportunities in the state of Bihar, and they have to travel to other states to get a better job opportunities. In fact, there also are sentiments on the ground who are speaking for NDA, stating that under NDA's rule, the work has been done, the roads are being better, but they are kind of fatigued with Nitish Kumar. So clearly the battle is neck to neck, whether it is the Mahagathbandhan or whether it is the NDA. The battle is neck to neck, and the Mahagathbandhan is hoping that this time around the extremely backward class as well as the Mahila voters would shift from the NDA towards the Mahagathbandhan. On the other hand, the NDA is thinking that the Mahila voters as well as the extreme backward class and backward class voters would continue to support Nitish Kumar. So both the alliance are poised neck to neck, and today's voting in the second phase, if you talk about Seemanchal, Asauddin OLC is also a big player this time around, because we can't deny the fact that back in 2020 he did.
Sabri Sachidar joining us with a ground report from Bihar. In fact, let's now cut across to our second parallel studio that we have for this election special here for Bihar. We have my colleague Kabir Naqvi with my colleague and our input editor Brijesh Pandey. Kabir and Brijesh, we were talking about this in the newsroom as well. What kind of numbers have come out has surprised everybody, which basically means nobody knows what the outcome of this election is going to be, because nobody expected this kind of a turnout in the first place.
Yeah, I think Smitaji hit the nail on the head when she says that now the waiting game actually begins, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see. We're all appalled with the numbers that have come across. It's of course a historic turnout, brisk voter turnout right since 11 a.m. as well. It was already beating phase 2 voter turnout numbers, Brijesh, but since the waiting game has now begun, if we could look at 2-3 possible questions, because you have of course the aspect of the women voters, and secondly the crucial demography of the young voters, those between the age of 18 to let's say 26, 27. What side have they swung towards? Are there, some interesting and crucial questions that you're keeping in mind come 14th? After that, when the opinionated editorials will come out and the number crunching will begin, what is going to be your focus and what are you interested in?
One of the reasons why this numbers shock me is that, that this is perhaps one of the most lackluster election I have seen in my life. Especially when it comes to Bihar. There is no dominant, dogged this thing that there was no that kind of excitement which you usually associate with elections of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Yep. There's no major anti-Nitish feeling across the state. There's no there's no that kind of a pro-RJD feeling across the state. And the numbers which have turned up is perhaps the highest in the history of Bihar. Even if you take the unified Bihar into consideration. So the first question which comes into mind, Kabir, is what prompted this kind of historic turnout? I mean, what were the figures? What were the reasons, factors why this kind of turnout happened? Is it because of 10,000, the 10,000 rupee which were given to the women of Bihar? Because we saw the kind of the impact Ladki Bahina scheme had on the fortunes of BJP-led NDA government, and from a close contest it turned it to hopelessly one side, almost a miraculous result when it came for BJP-led NDA. Or is it the youth voters which may sprung a surprise, even for Nitish Kumar, which is not completely hemmed in by you would say the Jungle Raj phenomena. They don't belong to a recent vintage. All they have seen is the government of, and they might not be satisfied with the law and order which the BJP or Nitish Kumar is claiming to be good. If you talk about migration, last 20 years, how much of that has changed? There are a lot of factors which are working for both parties and which are not working for both parties. So I think, the women voters, of course, they have been a deciding factor. So will 10,000 be the Ladki Bahina for BJP? Then that could very well explain the kind of phenomenal turnout, the historic turnout that has happened. Or is it be the new young voters who feel that not enough has been done, and let's give Tejasvi a chance, who's only talking about
his manifesto as well, Tejasvi's manifesto, Tejasvi Pranapatra. That also talks about direct transfers into the bank accounts, and Sabya has been getting us those ground reports time and again. He's been speaking to people right from Gaya, Patna, Purnia, all those places that he's visited. He's speaking to people directly, and one thing that I sort of understood was the fact that the direct money coming into your account is sort of guaranteeing the vote for the ruling dispensation. How many people are getting that money? And both the sides have now vowed and promised कि हाँ भाई पैसा मिलेगा आपके account में.
Everyone is wise after the incident. So I would say that one of the interesting aspect of people who have been able to give money before the election, Kabir, they have always been on the winner side.
Yeah, so I mean, Krishna, those are the preliminary discussions that
Kabir, I have only one thing to ask both you and Brijesh, and I'm going to ask that to all our panelists here as well, and others joining us via video conferencing as well. The one thing is that, they always say nobody knows, which way the Bihari is voting. Nobody knows what exactly is there in the minds of the Bihari, because you're talking about, Brijesh, you're saying the fact that there's no excitement. Look at the excitement. The biggest talking point of this election is the voter turnout in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, usually, we've always seen that, when it comes to election in Uttar Pradesh, when it comes to election in Bihar, it's always, it's a surcharged atmosphere. But this time it was not there. It was not like as if, कि किसी एक आदमी की हवा बह रही है, like, people are completely on one side of JDU, or they're so angry with Nitish Kumar, कि no, we are going to dislodge Nitish Kumar. Nothing of that sort was there on the ground. Jungle Raj and all is a good narration, but even Prime Minister had to remind that, that people of certain vintage has to tell youngsters about the gory days of the Jungle Raj. So I mean, it's going to be an extremely interesting turnout, and let's see whether 10,000 does the trick for Nitish Kumar or not.
Oh, let's see. Stay with us, Kabir and Brijesh. We have to get in all our wonderful experts who've taken time out to be with us. We have KV Prasad, senior journalist, with us. We have Smita Mishra ji with us. We have Ashwani Kumar, professor TIS, with us. We have Sumit Pandey, political editor of the Deccan Herald, with us. We also have Santosh Singh, senior journalist, and Faizan Ahmed, the senior journalist, all joining us over here. Thank you all of you for taking time out to be with us. I'm going to begin with Mr. KV Prasad ji, who's been with us patiently waiting in the studio. KV Prasad ji, talk to us from your perspective of years of observing elections. Brijesh ji gave a good idea, saying the fact that look at the turnout, look at what happened going into these elections, no clear wave, and yet you have Biharis speaking loudly than ever by with the ballot.
Well, sometimes I can just say something like this, that when you can't discern a wave, there is something called a silent wave. Okay. That plays into elections. So one doesn't know always. So it's always very dicey to go and predict. I did not detect any wave. I've experienced it personally in some polls, so you can get it wrong at that point of time. Okay. Having said that, I think what's encouraging is the number of people who turned out to cast their vote. That shows their faith in the whole process and the work and how they take their work seriously of electing their representative, somebody who is going to do the job for them in governing the state, which is the most important thing. You delegate your authority to run your government, which is always said, every individual, every citizen of that state has spoken tonight, has finished speaking. Of course, we'll have to wait till the results to kind of find out. One, and the higher turnout, as I did mention previously too, conventionally suggests that there is some kind of an angst among the voters, which turns out in numbers too. But in this case, you also have a mobilization by several parties both the coalitions on which is in the government and opposing it are there. Plus, you have this X factor which we've been talking about for the last several months is Jan Suraj. We don't know how, what kind of imagination they have triggered, especially among the young. So I think all these are factors that we need to look at carefully as we go along.
Okay, important factors. Let's also first try to demystify how this, massive, highest ever voter turnout happened in the first place. Ashwani Kumar, if you can help us understand, how did this come about, the highest ever voter turnout in the history of Bihar?
I think if you look at, Bihar history, part by part, historically, so this momentum that we see today was expected. In fact, we have been talking about it, and I'm kind of reflecting on it, not as a predictive science, but more as an interpretive science of understanding this, phenomena in Bihar. So if you just correlate, data-wise, I think women have been leading this surge, over some elections. So more than elsewhere in the country, Bihar, Bihari women, if you look at, largely created through the welfare architecture of NDA government led by Nitish Kumar, has been kind of, bringing this gender parity. So even in the last election, so that maybe, for media, it's a surprise. For trained political scientists and sociologists, this is not a surprise. What is important is here to understand, what it means, what this historic turnout means. So if there is a 10% gap between men and women, where does it go? What it means in terms of the final outcome, and how do we understand qualitatively this highest turnout? Whether or not it will result to what I mentioned elsewhere 2-3 days back, will it mean in Bihar, which has happened, critical elections? Look at 77 critical election. This is an American phrase coined, which means, drastic alteration of the political and social structure. Will it happen? And secondly, the critical elections happened, which we haven't paid attention since 1990. If you look at the structure of politics, it remains the same, only alliances have shifted. So both in terms of anti-incumbency and the incumbency advantage, perhaps, that will surprise us. Okay. Both ways, I'm telling you.
which again brings us to the same thing that we began this conversation with. We really don't know which way it's going to go. That's why I see Brijesh ji smiling also. Then we also get Sumit Pandey, political editor of Deccan Herald over here. This is an election where you have a brand new party in Bihar after a very long time entering the fray. I'm talking about the Jan Suraj party of Prashant Kishore. How much of a game changer do you think it's going to be? And also more importantly, do you think that that is also one of the factors contributing to the high voter turnout?
But I think it could have. But the day Prashant Kishore decided not to contest elections, I think the election was primarily bipolar between the Mahagathbandhan and the NDA. Because, in elections, voters are very, very, very clear. They don't want to waste their votes. They will hear you out, but they don't want to vote for also rans, that, you're also in contention. So, as far as I could understand traveling through Bihar, there were issues which his party raised. The interesting thing about Prashant Kishore's campaign, somebody should ask, is that do you even know, people know what is this election symbol? Prashant Kishore as a brand may have emerged from Bihar, but how many people know what is his election symbol? And the importance of election symbol in an election is very, very paramount. Even somebody like Prime Minister Modi, when he does a roadshow in Patna with a party symbol in his hand, because he knows that he has to underscore and reiterate that ultimately the people, when they go out at the ballot, when they vote, it's going to be the symbol that is important, because they're in alliance with the JDU, where the JDU voter will not find Tir, the arrow, they will look for that symbol. So in 2 years, he's raised some important questions. In last 2 years, he has immersed himself also as a brand, but he's raised issues which I think the political parties and people of Bihar will have to face in the days ahead, in the years ahead. But whether they're going to vote on those issues this time around, I have my doubts.
So you have your doubts. Santosh Singh, what kind of doubts do you have in your mind at this stage, Santosh Singh, especially with the final numbers coming in? We're looking at a 70% plus polling in the second phase alone, taking the overall average above 65, closer to 70%, highest ever. At this stage, what kind of doubts are you having in your mind?
One thing we have not discussed so far about the I think positive side of the SIR exercise.
Okay.
It had cut unnecessary slab from the electoral roll. So now we have more bona fide voters in this. Don't forget that fact. If you get a better voting percentage, it's because of the presence of voters here. That is point number one. Second point is, of course, the women's surge. I would tell you a story. Nitish Kumar today visited party office. He generally doesn't visit, but on polling day, last day of the polling day, he makes it a point to visit office. There were some, 80 phone callers. They were taking the calls, calling some people, getting feedback from booth. He asked, "Kya सूचना है? What is the information?" Then he asked about कि महिला voters का क्या हालचाल है. So then he got the response कि okay, there is very heavy turnout of women voters. He just smiled and he stayed there for some good 40 minutes and then left the office. That is one. The second reason for surge is, of course, we have been discussing all along, is heavy turnout of women voters. Third, we must not forget a good number of youth is also added to the roll. So let us not discount the youth factor as well, which is part of it disenchanted. I think youth, they are going three way. They are going Jan Suraj way, they are going Tejasvi way, and Nitish way, of course. That is point number 3. I was just going through the chart of the percentage polling at 5 p.m. I was pleasantly surprised to see the high turnout in 2 regions, Seemanchal, 4 districts of Seemanchal, that is Kishanganj, Araria, Purnia and Katiyar, and the Magadh region, Arbal, Jahanabad, Aurangabad. Anything between 67% to 70%, even 70-75% in some case. It could go further up at the final calculation. What does it suggest? This is the difficult phase for both parties. I would not say difficult for NDA or, but this is very even contest. It's a region-wise contest. If you take Shahabad behaves differently, Seemanchal behaves differently, Magadh behaves differently, and of course Mithilanchal is pretty mixed. So it's I think head on. So I do not have doubts about what all of us we are on the same page about the one factor, that is Nitish factor. When Nitish Kumar is soldering the entire election, that is one factor. We did not find anger against Nitish, which Prashant Kishore has been talking about. But I was at his village, Konar village, just a day before yesterday. Once I was out of his house, there was voice of dissent in his village itself. People are saying, okay, he is talking great things, but he would take time. He has got his seats from this election. What we probably said, कि उनको दही का जामन मिला है, जोरन मिला है, he will have to arrange for milk, or maybe for 2030. Of course, he has set the narrative of this election to a great extent.
Right.
But as all of us agree, it is primarily bipolar election, neck to neck. It could be 51-49 battle. I still have the hunch NDA still looks ahead. Let us see what happens.
Okay, bipolar election. Faizan Ahmed, the larger consensus seems to be this is a bipolar election. But a bipolar election which has witnessed a record voter turnout. Talk to us in terms of, look at the second phase of elections. That's where those parts, those regions of Bihar that are politically volatile, high Muslim population, those are the ones that have gone to polls in the second phase. And that's where there has been a greater polling percentage as compared to even the first phase. And that, tells you that there is the voterate of Bihar wanting to express themselves stronger in these regions.
First of all, for this highest turnout, I will say it is unbelievable. But as far as it is high turnout is credited with, partially credited with SIR, and I think the more consciousness of the people, of the voters who were not voting in previous election, but this time, whether it is men or women or youth or elder people, they have voted in big number. As far as the Seemanchal region is concerned, this is really very surprising, extremely surprising that in a backward region of Bihar like Seemanchal, the polling has gone uh, uh, up in such a fashion that it has surpassed the entire Bihar. In Kishanganj, it is more than 76% vote. And you know, Kishanganj is not only backward, but literacy rate is very poor there. The people are there also financially weak, and migration is also quite high from that region. And interestingly, Kishanganj has about 70% of Muslim population.
Yeah.
In this entire Seemanchal region, the Muslim population is between 40 to 70%.
Yeah.
And never before such a high voting percentage was recorded. I mean, even lowest voting was recorded in that region in previous elections. So this is very surprising.
Okay.
And I will give also give this credit to certain religious as well as social organizations which had appealed to the Muslims community particularly to come out in big number and vote for whatever party they wanted to vote. No organization even asked them to vote for a particular party or ABCD. But I think there was a kind of bad name for this region also for low percentage of voting, and this responsibility was going to Muslim population for their low turnout.
Yeah, okay,
but now they have come out in big number.
Absolutely. Muslim population, 70% of Muslim population coming out for a major voter turnout. We need to take a very short breather, but Smita Mishra wanted to quickly come in. Smita, if you can quickly make your point so that we can quickly head into a short break.
Yes, first of all, you see, I just want to add that for the women, if you look at the reasons why so many have come out, a lot of people will credit the 10,000 scheme. Of course, it was a factor. It was a motivation to make them come out and, you know, make their point by voting. But apart from that, all that women have seen in the past 3 terms is also the reason they have become very conscious of their power, their electoral power, their political power, their need to tell the people that they matter, they must have a say. As far as the youth is concerned, I think one reason the youth came out in such good numbers is because this is one election where a lot of people were talking about youth. You know, earlier there was talk of development in a general way, there was talk of, there were caste factors, etc. But the youth as a factor, as an electoral subject, I mean, this is one election where the youth mattered the most in terms of the campaign. So that must have been the reason.
Okay.
And thirdly, I think, is one incidental reason, that is a big population of Bihar, as you know, especially the men folk, they are always out for livelihood. This time they had come home for Chhath and they decided to stay on so they can exercise their franchise and only then join back their work.
Right.
So that has added to the turnout. It's
all about timing, isn't it, Smita Mishra? Great timing.
Yes, great timing.
Great time. Here we are understanding what that means when it comes to the outcome of the elections, which we will know on the 14th of November. Bihar recording a voter turnout of 67.14%. It is the highest ever voter turnout in the history of the state. The highest voter turnout in Bihar in the second phase has been seen in Kishanganj with over 70%, 72% voting, bumper voting in the second phase of the Bihar elections, coming on the back of a 65% polling in the first phase put together. This is the highest ever voter turnout in the history of the state. Kishanganj recording 76.2%, and polling coming to a close. We're all eagerly awaiting the data from the exit polls. But for now, let's try to understand what this means. We are looking at unprecedented voting in the Bihar elections. Nobody expected these kind of numbers. As of 5 p.m. Alone is 67.14%. We have Mr. K.V. Prasad, senior journalist, joining us on the broadcast here with us in the studio. Thank you, Mr. K.V. Prasad, for taking time out to be with us over here. We have Smita Mishra, author and senior journalist, also with us here in the studio. Smita ji, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. I'm going to begin by asking a straightforward question to you, Smita ji. Look at that turnout numbers. Unprecedented. Never even heard of. I mean, put together, you're looking at both in excess of 65% on average.
Yes, and that's why I would say, we have to wait to see who wins, whether Nitish Kumar comes back as Chief Minister of Bihar, or it is the challenger Tejasvi Yadav and his allies who will come into government. But even before we come to the 14th of November, which will be a big day, I think the voters of Bihar have already won. Democracy has already won in Bihar, and the voters of Bihar, the youth, the elderly, and most particularly our women, need to be complimented with a very, very open heart, because they have proved, no matter what the situation, no matter what the constraints, if people want to exercise their franchise, there is no power on earth which can stop them. We have always been feeling this, if I may say, the jibe, the tana, because you see, all over the country, including the farther states of the northeast, in Kashmir and everywhere, voting has gone up in the last few elections. All over the country, you will find that voting above 70%, 65% was almost the norm in the past few elections.
Okay.
But that had not been happening in Bihar, and it was kind of a sort of a disappointment why people were not coming out in so many, in as many numbers as other states of the country. And migration, palayan, because a big segment of Bihar's population, particularly the male population, has to go out of the state for livelihood. And it was not very easy for them to come back just for one day, to leave the work they were doing in whichever part of the country, just to come and, vote in their area. And so we had often seen poor numbers in Bihar voting.